Living 242?
Queendom Living, period. And it's a little crown.
Okay, I'm on the wrong one. Yeah.
That would
It's
help.
more than one.
Our live. I see us.
Okay. This. Do you all see us? Do you see us on?
Yeah.
Yes, we're live.
So we're streaming live now on Facebook. My name is Ron Wages, and I wanted to welcome everyone to the final day of Engineers Week. We have Imagining Tomorrow. We've got 3 phenomenal ladies of Delta Sigma Theta here to talk with us, and I'm really, really excited to have them introduce themselves and give a perspective of what it's like to be a woman in STEM. So I'm going to start out with a few questions. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat in the Facebook Live, and we'll get a chance to step through them. But again, just starting out, each of the ladies, why don't you introduce yourself? Starting out with Cheryl.
Hello there. My name is Cheryl Greer. I am a manufacturing engineer by trade, graduate of Western Michigan University. I also have a master's in business from University of Detroit Mercy.
Andrew.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrea West Wages. I have a degree in computer science from Jackson State University. I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and I am currently working in a program management project controls role.
And Elena.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Elena Pascal. I am a graduate of Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in Industrial Engineering. I'm currently living in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for the quick introduction. Obviously, you're all from Delta Sigma Theta representing in the house. I appreciate that. And everybody is from Detroit and all graduates of Cass Tech.
Yeah.
Really excited to talk with you today. So just starting out for each of you to give the listeners an understanding, why did you choose a field of STEM in your choice of school? Why don't we start with Elena this time?
Okay, so I chose engineering. I decided to major in engineering because I was interested in science. And it probably was one of my favorite subjects. Shout out to Miss Mancuso at St. Scholastica, who was an awesome science teacher. And it was because of her that I found myself, my parents put me into programs like DAPSEP in Detroit. I also spent a summer at Kettering University in their STEM pre-college program. And so that early exposure kind of guided me toward the engineering path.
Excellent. Andrea?
So I decided on a career in STEM or STEM as my major of choice because I guess I've always been interested in technology and how it works. And that started at Cass Tech, actually. And moving on to Jackson State, I chose computer science because I had a fascination with being able to make things happen quickly and a desire for understanding productivity and coding behind both hardware and software. And I think for me, doing the different co-ops and internships is sort of what has shaped my idea or my knowledge around STEM. And also choosing to attend Jackson State University, which is an HBCU, and being able to have a lot of love and a lot of nurturing and a lot of support for the STEM program at Jackson State University and all my peers and all of my instructors. One of the best things about it was being able to find out about opportunities pretty early on and always find support for classes and projects and things like that. So the part about, I think that's the end of my question, actually. I'll wait for the career part later.
No worries. No worries. I appreciate it. And obviously, you're really excited about being in a STEM career. And being an engineer myself and having worked quite a few years we understand that it's pretty much a male-dominated field of study. And I just wanted to get some feedback from some of the panelists on how does it feel to be a female in an industry that's predominantly male. Why don't we start with Cheryl this time?
So I knew this would be a question for us here. The journey that we've been on, the way I would look at it, being in a predominantly male field is kind of like when you go on a trip, on a journey. Sometimes you have some bumpy roads. Sometimes the roads are straight. Sometimes you get frustrated with the people you're in the car with. And sometimes, it's smooth. That's exactly how my journey has been in this predominantly male field. I say that because it's been ups and downs. I want to be real with the people who are listening to this. Sometimes I've been frustrated, but like I would on a trip, I continue to go because I know the end result is going to be great. Just a quick example, when I first started as a manufacturing engineer at the plant, all men, well, let me back up and say in college, I've had classes where I'm the only female. Get in the workforce, I'm the only female, or I'm the only Black, or I'm the only Black and female. You have all combinations of that. So when I first started working at the plant, and we get there and drop our things off at the office, and then you walk literally like 2 football fields to get to where you're going to check on whatever situation. Here comes 11:30, 12 o'clock, we're about to have lunch. Where do men keep their money? In their pocket. Where do women? Our purse. So I quickly learned, get some pants with pockets. You don't want to be the one to have to wait, I need to walk back and get my purse, or, So I say that I've learned along this journey, and not saying I don't at all deny my femininity, and I don't at all expect anyone to ignore my femininity, but it's some things I've done to make my life easier. Nobody would have told me don't go back and get your purse, but here I am. I'd have to walk all the way back and do all of this. So the journey, let me sum it up. The journey has been different. It's an interesting experience, but again, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from working with men. I've learned a different point of view because I have a woman's point of view. So I've learned from them, but I've also learned to be stronger. I've learned to be more confident, and I've learned to stand up for myself. Because if you're in a room with men with a strong bass voice, I'm small stature, and with a woman voice, hey, I've learned to speak a little louder. Excuse me, Ron, I have a question. So you just learn to do things like that. And they learn also, they learn to respect the value of a woman, the opinion of a woman. So I've taught some men some things. So it's been an interesting journey in this predominantly male field, but I don't think I'd change it for the world. I am looking for new women and more women to be in the field, but it's been a great experience overall.
Excellent feedback, Cheryl. And just a point, if we do have time, I'd like to come back to that point. Understanding diversity and inclusion in our industry is really important. So if we do have time at the end, I'd like to come back and get perspectives from each of the panelists on any issues or opportunities that you can speak to those of us that need to be allies of African-American women in STEM. Again, before we get into that, Elena, did you have a perspective on how it is to be a female in a predominantly male industry?
Yeah, I can add to what Cheryl shared before, and all of that is very true. And I completely agree. I think for me, it's a journey that's taught me how to be bold, how to speak up, how to be clear, and how to make people respect you in a room. I would say that the journey begins in the university setting, because oftentimes if you are pursuing engineering or STEM field, you might be the only girl, or you might be the only Black person, or you might be both of those. And so you begin to learn, even in the classroom setting, that you have to make a presence, you have to speak up, you have to advocate for yourself, and you learn how to do that. You kind of learn how to find your voice, So as Cheryl mentioned, I think there's some benefits in working in a male-dominated society. It does kind of teach you how to be bold and confident. I would say a tool that helped me in that regard was reaching back to my community. So I think often there are times when you can feel secluded, you can feel left out and not a part. But what was kind of the saving grace for me is that I had a community of friends and a community of folks, outside of those in the classroom that didn't leave me starving for their attention, if you will, and they just kind of helped me to build my own confidence outside of the classroom and even outside of the workplace, for that matter. So I found that, kind of your external communities, your external tribes. And so in the university setting, that might look like NSBE. It might look like your group of NSBE friends. In the workplace, it might look like your African American network. It might look like some of the operators if you're in a manufacturing setting, some people that look like you. And so I found that tapping into those kinds of resources, kind of helps give you an opportunity to be yourself, and to be more bold, and to have some kind of some fellowship, if you will, in those settings, so that it doesn't seem so intense at times and so awkward for you all day long, so that's been helpful to me. Yeah.
Excellent feedback to the listeners. Moving on, it's important to make sure that we have the right tools that we're working with to be successful in our work environment. I'd like to get each of your perspectives on what would be the most impactful tool or resource that has helped you throughout your journey. Andrea, you haven't spoken in a bit. Why don't you start out?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's definitely pivotal in a STEM environment, based on the things that both Cheryl and Elena said in terms of the environment and in the makeup or the diversity of the group of folks that we work with. For me, it has always been, so at the collegiate level, for example, being a part of the affinity clubs related to STEM, right? So the Association of Computer Machinery, or NSBE, and NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. And then also utilizing the resources that were available to me on my campus. So I actually did a work study in the college placement office. And as a result of doing that, I had a very early exposure to all of the companies that were coming to campus to recruit for my field and others, but then also all of the professional development that actually worked to prepare you for those interviews and those opportunities that were coming up. And that could have been in the form of resume support, or resume writing support, or editing. There are also mock interviews. And then moving on to actually getting those co-ops and internships, I was able to actually complete two spring semester co-ops where I had a chance to work for IBM, and then also doing internships. So by the time it was over with, I had 2 spring co-ops plus 3 summer internships. So by the time I graduated, I had built up a pretty robust resume. So I would say on each of those positions, I made a point of making sure that I was connected with someone who can actually show me how this works in that particular corporate America environment. In one of the jobs, I was actually working in a lab coding at IBM, and I was paired with one of the lead coders there that actually taught me the things I didn't know and showed me sort of how to be, if you will. So I think it's very important to identify a sponsor at different points of your life. So be it in college, be it on the job, and then at internships, as well as in corporate America. And then outside of even the company that you're in, having sponsors that allow you to bounce ideas off of and help you validate maybe your elevator speech. So I think being able to utilize the resources that are available to you at the college level, but then also utilizing the resources available to you in the company that you're working in. One of the things that I would like to note there, as part of the journey, I have had sort of a very interesting sort of journey with my career, starting off with working in the high tech field, working for Texas Instruments semiconductors, and then moving into test and measurement equipment working for Hewlett Packard, which then became Agilent Technologies. But in both of those roles, I took a non-traditional route for STEM because those companies hired engineers to do technical sales. So I had a technical sales engineering journey. And then after moving from the high tech field, I moved into healthcare, where I was working with healthcare technology and actually working in ORs and promoting and selling, doing business development for surgical devices and equipment, and working with surgeons on how to actually utilize ultrasonic energy and things like that in the OR. And then moving from that industry into energy, which is where I am now. I work for Duke Energy. So I would say, don't be afraid to diversify your experiences. Don't be afraid to step out of that segment or that sector that you may be in and going into another. Don't be afraid to sharpen your saw in an area that, that you may not have had exposure to in the past. Because as I mentioned, there's always someone at that location that's going to be willing to help you fill in the gap.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Cheryl, any comments on that question? What is the most impactful tool or resource that has helped you throughout your journey?
Let me first say, Andrea makes me want to start this over. I should start my life over, my journey over. I should have done some of the things she did. But something I neglected to say when we first started, my first introduction to engineering was DAPCEP, Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program. And I think that's a valuable resource to tap into for anyone out there who has a child who shows an interest in one of the STEM fields. Because my parents did not, they didn't go to college. My siblings who did, none of them went into a technical field, but I showed this interest. I was always trying to figure things out. I loved math. So my parents got me in DAPCEP. So I think that's a valuable resource. As someone mentioned, National Society of Black Engineers, when you go on to college, your affinity groups. What I did not do that I now try to make sure I am for others is I did not seek a mentor when I first got into my career. I try my best to be for any young lady, any Black person coming through. I am there for you. I make it very clear. I see you. I'm here if you need me. If you don't, fine. But if you do, I'm here. But I didn't see that when I first started out, and I didn't know to go seek it. So that's a resource I didn't have, but that's what I would encourage someone to get. The resources that definitely start early on, whether you went to college or not, tell your child is get into these groups, get into the affinity groups, get into a resource that can help you, as well as start day one at your job, find someone. And then you kind of, I won't say interview them, but talk with them and see if, okay, this person can help me. This person can be an advocate, a resource. So that's my input to the question.
Understood. Elena, any additional comments on the?
I think Andrea and Cheryl have really covered it. I would just really echo the same thing. What I probably could add is, in my personal opinion, early exposure is key. And so I believe that, having, because you mimic what you see, if you know what I mean? So if you know people that are teachers and you see that, and then those are the things that you can aspire to. And so it's the same for, engineering and some of these technical fields. The earlier that children are exposed to these sorts of fields and that they even know that there are possibilities, the better. And so I would attribute me, pursuing the STEM field to just really early exposure, to like exactly what Cheryl mentioned. So there's the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program in Detroit. Every large city typically has an early STEM youth education program. In Indianapolis, the city that I'm in, we have MEPI, which is the Minority Engineering Program of Indianapolis, which I'm fortunate enough to work for. But again, every major city has a program kind of like that, where children are introduced early on, to some of the STEM fields. So I would probably just add that little tidbit, that just the early exposure, I think is really helpful. And then again, all of the tools that we have along the way community essentially, so we have our NSBE chapters, the Society of Women Engineers, there's the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers as well. And then, kind of when you get into the workplace as well, you have other, groups. And so those for me have been invaluable, really invaluable. I have learned so much, and it's just nice to have a community where you can share ideas and grow and learn in a safe place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to take a different turn, any of the studies show if you listen to McKinsey and Company or Deloitte and Touche or any of the big firms will highlight that having a diverse group of individuals in the room making decisions are extremely important. They make better decisions, the companies are more successful, and they make better products for their customers and bring more value to their shareholders. For those of us that are not African-American women that want to be allies, can you give us any coaching? What can we do to make it easier for your voice to be heard so that we can be a better company and bring more value to our shareholders? What can we do as allies? Anything?
I'll take a stab at this one. I would say, because I think it's a really good question in the times that we're in now. I think all of the racial injustice that we saw last year makes it safe now for us to have these kind of conversations. I would first start with listening. Yes. I know it sounds very simple, but I think that's probably the most important piece, is just listening to those affinity groups. That's the first. And so listening requires you to take off your preconceived notions and to stop talking, so it does require some work. And so I say listen, and just being open-minded, I would say, is the first step. I think another resource, and I believe that a couple companies have done these sorts of things, and that is kind of just doing some case studies. So look at some of the individuals within your department or corporation. I would even say you could probably look at individuals that have left the company and maybe start to ask the question, why did they leave? What did they have supports around? What were their performance reviews like in the discussions, and what were the topics that they were bringing up that they were concerned about? Perhaps that particular person just couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave, but maybe some of those concerns are valid and still affect some others, in the department. So I would say doing some case studies, if you will, taking a deeper dive into individuals and getting their feedback.
Excellent. That's good feedback. Good word. Any other feedback on that topic before we move on?
Yes, I would say invite African Americans to the table. If you look around the room and it's just Ron and it's 30 other people, something's wrong with this picture. When there are other people, your workforce, and we know, from an HR perspective, the percentages of your company. How do we only have one African American in this room? What happened? I think that's one thing. The other thing is, if I could talk to, and I have done this, I've done this with my daughter's white teacher. I was very happy that she came to me when everything happened with George Floyd and asked me some questions. So if I was talking to someone of a different race, of how to be a little more inclusive, is make the assumption the person is like you. If that person is an engineer sitting next to you, assume that they have the same things you have. Assume they can afford the house you can afford.
Wow.
Assume that they have a mother and father supporting them. Like all three of us grew up with our mother and father. Don't assume I came from a single parent household, because I did not. I don't know that world. So, and nothing's wrong with that world. It's just assume that I can afford financially, mentally, physically, whatever, the same things you have. Let's start there. And I think if we had that, a lot of people would not have so many biases, because you assume I have what you have. I can do what you can do. I'm just as smart as you, those would be what I would say to a person.
Any extra comments before we move on, Andrea?
I think they actually said it all. I think the last part of that I didn't hear though is sort of the empowerment for us. So you posed a question is what could they do for us? What I would say what we could do is we can raise our hand and specifically ask to be, at the table or specifically be in that meeting. This just happened to me on Friday at work. One of the questions was, is there, when I look around and I hear about meetings going on and I wasn't invited to that meeting, I'll ask to be invited because I feel like it's something that I need to know. And I guess we can be proactive in asking for a seat at the table in places that we may feel like we haven't been asked, because either it's an oversight or it's an opportunity, one or the other. And I feel like we can also take a little bit of not a little bit, we got to take ownership of sort of our journey in these situations. And they're either going to say yes or no.
Understood.
And Ron, I'm gonna add something else. I think Cheryl has something too. Another thought that I have too is, I think this goes on both sides. So this goes on those looking to learn more, as well as those minority, groups, in that we all need to really understand the value and the benefit of diversity. We really do. And, Ron, kind of like you explained as you led with this question, if you think about it, there's no product that goes to just one type of people. Okay, so before I joined the nonprofit world, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and our drugs were sold everywhere, all across the globe, right? So if you are making a product if your customer is, diverse and looks like any number of things, then the more inputs that look like those people, the better, right? The more opportunity and you're more probable to get a product that is willing to satisfy, right? Those customers. And so I just think that the truly valuing diversity, in its core, also I think is a great start.
Understood. Cheryl, you had another comment or no?
Yes, that was very good, Elena. The one thing I wanted to add is kind of on a note of what Andrea was saying, what we could do as African Americans is this, if no other time, I'll call it the George Floyd era,
Absolutely.
this is our time to speak up. And that doesn't mean be angry about it, but this is our time. And the opportunity I had is we gained a new leader of my group, a new executive, and he wanted to meet with each team member, and he had set questions, 2 or 3 questions. And one of them was, what could we do to improve our team? And I thought, here's my chance. The only Black female on the team. Here's my chance. So I did the facts. So this is just last year, 2020. I looked, I already knew the issue that I was the only Black female, but I did some stats. And so I said, what I'd like to see of this team is more diversity. And specifically, because I'm very careful with that word, diversity doesn't necessarily mean it's me. You could diversify and get other, races or women or whatever. So I said, I'd like to see more diversity on the team, specifically Black people. And this is why. And I broke down the stats. We have this number of women out of 77 people. We have 1 Black person out of 77 people. You're looking at her.
Wow.
And he called me like a week later. The executive director called me and I said, thank you for asking the question. And because you asked it, I felt here's my chance to say something.
Right.
Wonderful.
So that's what I would say we can do. When you get the opportunity, bring it up, say
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So we've been.
I'm sorry. I just want to throw one more
Hit a
thing
button, Ron.
that goes into this piece that goes beyond just us. And I would say a lot of the opportunities for STEM, and to tie into what you just said, Ron, is also exposure of our children. We all are mothers, and I have 3 children, and 2 are in the STEM field. Well, actually all 3 of them now, but my son in particularly is a freshman mechanical engineering major at North Carolina A&T. And one of the things that we did early on with him and the girls is exposing them to STEM. exposing them to opportunities where they can actually go and understand more about this field. And it's not for everyone, obviously, but that's where the exposure comes in. And I think helping them to prepare themselves for when they get to a university curriculum in engineering, doing those things up front. And so that may be similar to what Elena experienced. Elena, you did a pre-college program at
Kettering. GMI, it was GMI back then, yep.
Yeah, and my son did one at Georgia Tech and also one at NC State, but it gives you exposure to what life in the classroom could look like for you as an engineering student. And then also connecting them on in the community with programs that can support them pre-college and during college. And then, don't wait for them to figure out if maybe someone is going to give them an opportunity for an internship. Encourage them of how to leverage the resources on their respective campuses to be able to get out front and get as much exposure from a freshman level as possible, to be able to get as much exposure to educate them on the different jobs related to that actual major, because that's another piece of it. We know what we have our degrees in, but none of us are actually doing what we originally got our degrees in. So that's just another part of it, is the exposure to how many opportunities are available to us because we have this technical foundation.
Absolutely.
And because we're in a virtual world, it's even bigger. So if you couldn't drive your child across town before, just get them online.
There you go. That's it. So the last question, I'd like to kind of blend a couple of concepts. We've talked a lot about the journey that you ladies have taken. Some similar, some very different, all starting at Cass Tech, all leading through DST. To speak briefly about the journey, but also tied into maybe one sentence about imagining tomorrow. Because really, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about the future. So if each of you can kind of take just a moment or a sentence or two to talk about your journey and how it should tie to STEM tomorrow from a STEM perspective. Cheryl.
Turn. I didn't want to go
I'll
first.
go. You want me to go, Cheryl?
Okay, that's her. Elena.
Okay. So I can say that, engineering, as Andrea mentioned, and as we've really discussed, it's so many different things. And so my journey has taken me, if I say it, I'm just a kid from Detroit. So it's taken me from Detroit to Indianapolis to England, where I lived for 3 years, back to the United States, and then to France. And so I would say that, my journey has been all over the globe, literally. We've gone all over, traveling, and as well as even in my career, I started out with internships in the automotive industry. And I went from the automotive industry to the pharmaceutical industry. And then today, where I support a not-for-profit in exposing children to STEM education. And so my journey has been, all over the place, and who knows where it will go from here. I will say that I imagine the future to be bright. I would imagine that we have many more young girls and young boys of color in the technical fields. That starting today, we have more children that are in programs like DATSEP and like NEPI, and that are saying, hey, I think I really want to be an engineer one day. So that's my hope.
Wonderful. Andrea?
I thought Cheryl was next.
Andrea's next. Cheryl's good.
Okay, I'll go next. I already spoke a little bit about my journey, but the pieces that I would say to that's really been exciting, because I have done different roles. Probably one of the coolest things that I've done. I had a chance to travel to both Hamburg, Germany, and Paris, France, to actually work on development of a technology that was going to be used in reconstructive surgery as well as plastic surgery when I worked for Johnson & Johnson. And to be able to go and really kind of do the sausage making, if you will, on development of leveraging a technology that was used for something else and be able to create it for life-changing operations for folks for reconstructive after breast cancer, or even on the aesthetic side with being able to change the life or the recovery of a cosmetic procedure that typically just wasn't thought of before, and just leveraging the knowledge and the skill sets of folks outside of the United States and being able to bring that back and share that information across the board. I would say the sky is the limit when it comes down to what you can do in STEM. And from a nuanced perspective, even in Delta Sigma Theta, what I love about the role that I have, I'm actually serve as a corresponding secretary for my chapter here. And every single day I'm troubleshooting technology for someone because I can. Every single day I'm being asked to do something that we hadn't done before because we can. And it's not just me, there's a whole team of folks that are in STEM around me, and just being able to utilize what we didn't have, 20, 30 years ago to where we are now. One of the things that is interesting about the journey, I talked earlier about working for Texas Instruments. Well, in that role, developing or working when they were developing custom integrated circuits for cellular phones in the early days of both the analog and digital cellular phones, and before we even had one. And so when the mock-ups were coming, and then moving into Hewlett Packard, where we were actually doing the systems optimization for the networks, for the cellular networks that we have today. So being able to have been a part of all of that, and then even early on working in the automotive design piece of it, and we were designing chipsets for engines. So it's so many things that you can actually do in this field, and I have a passion about it, as you can see. And I guess my hope for the future is the ending part of this is I absolutely want to see the recruitment of women, African-American young women and young men in STEM increasing. And I think the pipeline for that begins at the middle school level. So to be able to develop programs and leverage existing programs, and even multiplying those with partnering with corporations to be able to fund those programs to get those kids that are curious about STEM and continue to kind of take them through the journey. So there is a bench of available STEM ready students for internships, multiple internships, and then leading to permanent employment. So that's my hope for the future.
Wonderful. And then Cheryl.
Okay, well, like Elena and Andrea, just a girl from Detroit, West Side, 7 Mile. That's where my journey began.
6 Mile?
Cool crap.
Let me get a shout out McDowell, Bobby, and Hay. But anyway, so went from there to, of course, Western Michigan. And my journey is a little different than like Andrea went to a HBCU. Elena and I went to a predominantly white university from there. Also, unlike them, most of my career has been at General Motors. But where that journey within General Motors has taken me is I've pretty much traveled the entire United States, Mexico, China, Korea, did a stint in Korea. I started out as a manufacturing engineer in the plant, and then went on to be a benchmark engineer. Just a little side note, as a result of Elena, who she considers me her mentor, but she was able to help me get a job when she did her. Remember that?
I do.
At General Motors. And because of her, some people that she was interning with had never seen a plant before. How do you work for an automotive industry and never see a plant? So I took them on a tour, and that became my thing for like the next 10 years. But anyway, fast forward, I became a benchmark engineer. What that did for me is every weekend I had a different vehicle, not necessarily a GM product, but anybody's product, so that I could assess it. I'm saying that story because I want people to understand engineering can be fun. It can be glamorous. it can be a whole lot of exciting things. I mean, I had family and friends like, okay, now you're driving a BMW. Okay, next week you're driving a Mercedes. Okay, now you're driving a Cadillac. I've had some exciting times on my journey. Moved forward, I went to the product side where I was designing parts for the car. I then became an engineering business manager where I basically managed headcount and budget. Why do you need an engineering degree for that? It's the foundation of so many things. That's what everyone needs to understand. Neither one of us are working in a core engineering field right now, but it is the foundation that leads you to so many things. It's that foundation that puts me and Andrea as our lead tech person in the sorority or at the church or, all of that. We've done the working with youth. We all work with youth. Elaine has afforded the opportunity to do that full time. Andrea and I are doing it part-time with A World in Motion, DAPSEP, things like that. So fast forward, I then start working with products and the future vehicles. I am now afforded the opportunity to be a supplier diversity program manager. So my job in essence is helping smaller minority, diversity, let me say that, minority and diverse, underprivileged, people who are classified as underprivileged races or organizations. I'm sitting here making sure I get it right. My boss is like probably saying, can you get that title right? But basically the official categories that fall under diversity, we help them in getting their foot in the door to larger companies like General Motors. So I'm proud to be working in that. I've done all this work over the years, and now I get to full-time, in a full-time position, I get to help smaller groups, smaller companies, Black men and women get their foot in the door for larger business. How I imagine the future being brown, more brown people working in the industry, whether it's a tech field. I would love to see them in a STEM field, but just more brown people having opportunities at leadership levels, large companies, large sectors, whether private or public, but just the world being browner.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Ladies, I can't tell you how proud I am of each of you. You speak well for and make Cass Tech proud. You make Detroit proud, and you make Delta Sigma Theta proud. Fire and ice all the way. I want to thank you for spending the time, sharing your experiences, sharing your vision for the future, and please continue to stay involved in the community, continue to lead, because we are going to be a better country and just totally better off with you guys at the forefront. So thank you very much. I appreciate you, and you all be blessed.
Thank you.
Wash your hands.
We have something else to share.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes.
So
we
we have a list. We have a list of, so we talked a lot about STEM resources and how important early exposure is. And so we put together a short list. This is not meant to be comprehensive, but just a short list of some resources in STEM for youth, in case anybody is interested.
Wow.
And so we'll make sure that that is available. So there's the list there. So we have NSBE, which is a National Society of Black Engineers. They often have a NSBE Junior like affiliate, and that NSBE Junior chapter can have programs offered at schools, elementary schools. There's a Society of Automotive Engineers. They offer, Cheryl, you mentioned that they offer a camp, right?
It's A World in Motion. So it's not a camp, but children in elementary or middle school can get involved in it. It's oftentimes a teacher can request them to come to the school, and they'll have engineers volunteer to teach the kids different engineering techniques and things of that nature. But it's called A World in Motion through SAE.
Okay. There's also Project Lead the Way. And so we listed their website there as well. Project Lead the Way is a non-for-profit organization that has also, they have STEM related programs, and they typically go directly into the schools. So you could check out their website and find out if they have any offerings in the schools in your area. Most major universities with a College of Engineering We'll also offer some kind of camp or program for youth, in the area. So it might look like a summer program, a summer camp. It could even be a Saturday workshop. But most of your big universities, so like Wayne State, Michigan, Wayne State, I know for sure, the University of Michigan, Kettering, here in Indianapolis, Purdue has a minority engineering program office, and they offer summer academies and summer camps.
North
IUPUI
Carolina State.
as well.
Yep. I wanted to throw in the North Carolina ones too. So North Carolina.
Okay, yes.
North Carolina State and a lot of the universities here, University of North Carolina at Charlotte, all of those do as well.
Mhm. And then we've mentioned, you've heard a lot about DepSep and MePI as well. So those websites are listed there for Michigan and Indiana residents. And like Cheryl mentioned in her talk as well, in this virtual environment that we're in now, for organizations that may have been off limits for you, you can easily participate now, in a virtual setting. So I would even encourage folks to check out STEM resources in another country, in other states as well.
I just glanced at the Facebook page. Someone asked the question about some cost for summer programs. So Andrea, I know your son participated in a lot of them. I don't know if you want to address cost.
Sure.
And Elena, you actually participated yourself, right?
Yeah.
Well, I would say, first of all, there's so many resources. Every summer, and my husband knows this, every summer, it was actually right about now, I would do the research on what's all available. And there's so many programs that are free. So let me just throw that out there. There are a lot of programs that are free of charge. Some do have minimal charges. Some of the camps, depending on the age of your child, are overnight camps where you live on campus. But to Elena's earlier point, some of the Saturday workshops and summer sort of day camps have a minimal cost. But I would say just search for STEM camps in my area, and you can even put free as part of your search. And then you can also look for, what was I going to say? You can also look for the organizations that we just mentioned there. They will also, if they have a NSBE junior chapter in your city, they actually show the resources for the camps that they offer each summer. It's not in every city, but the list is growing. And to your point, everything's online now. So it could be anywhere from a $200 for the whole camp cost, all the way up to perhaps, $1,000, but that depends on the age and how long you're staying. But most of the camps in the city offer free of charge STEM camps. So I would encourage you to look for those first. But if there's something custom that you're looking for, then you can venture off to the ones that are for pay.
Yes, specifically Carnegie Mellon has a camp that is a week-long overnight that they do offer scholarships for. Phenomenal program. That is 100%. That is
actually.
I'll add to that and say, like Andrea mentioned, the price can range. It just depends on the duration. If there is, staying in a dorm and food involved, so I mean, they can get quite pricey, anywhere from $250 probably to $1,000. However, I would strongly encourage anybody to apply, because there are always scholarships available, and we're in a COVID time right now as well. And so people are also understanding of that. And again, at the end of the day, universities want to see more diverse looking students. They do. They want more diverse looking population in their freshman classes. And so this is the way to do that. And so they are willing to offset the cost to get your students into the program. And so I would encourage you to apply no matter the cost. And then you could always, if the cost is something that's outside of your budget, you could always, just kind of provide an explanation as to why you might not be able to meet that, and you will be pleasantly surprised. So someone on the back end of that, I see that happen more often than not, that parents don't even have to worry about the cost, or perhaps the cost is split, with them.
Well, and the other thing I would throw out there on every application, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Ron, There are multiple programs at Carnegie Mellon, but Carnegie Mellon and MIT both have programs that are free. And it's a 6-week program on campus, on the campus of those two universities. And they take rising juniors and rising seniors interested in STEM fields for those. So I would encourage you to take a look at those. And then Georgia Tech, which is one of the ones that my son attended.
That wasn't fair.
That one wasn't free. That one was, I want to say, it may have been $1,500 or something, but that covered everything and to live on campus. So you have to, but even in that application, that was what I was going to say. In every one of these applications, they actually offer the ability to allow you to select, I need support. So if you need the support to attend, you can just make it known, and then you become a part of that opportunity. So they're not going to turn you away just based on cost. There's always a plan and an option for almost all of these programs to not limit who can attend.
Do we have any other questions in the chat at all or no?
No, it's predominantly comments, just people really appreciating what we've said today.
Yeah, again, I do want to make sure that I thank each of you ladies again, really, for being an example of what success looks like in STEM. You happen to be Deltas, you happen to be African-American women, you happen to be from Detroit, and you happen to be from Cass Tech. Maybe that's a sequence of events or a prediction of the
future. Just happened to be great, because that sounds like a lot of great things going on there.
I know, right? No, but thank you very much. I've enjoyed being a part of the program and listening to your stories and journeys and understanding the proper imagination for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, for being a great host.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, be safe and stay COVID free.
Yes.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.